Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another video on the Luderco Arms channel. Today we are putting rear brake pads on my wife's 2020 Chevy Colorado. So this has four-wheel disc brakes. We did the brakes on the front. Now we're going to do the brakes on the back. So I have already done the other side. We're just down to one side now. No sense in filming double of doing the same exact thing. So the brake pads we're using are these Raybestos Element 3 brake pads. EHT 1806H is the part number. And when you open the box, you'll see all of this, but twice as much, because we already used the ones for the other side. So you got these clips, you got the little noise maker, and you got two brake pads still. Like I said, we did the other side already. So these back brakes are real super simple, and provided you don't have to fight a bunch of corrosion, all you're going to need is a 12mm socket on a ratchet or an impact, you know, whatever you want to use, and a small C-clamp. This happens to be a El Cheapo from Harbor Freight that I use for doing disc brakes, because you can push the button and pull it out. So this setup on the rear is really super simple. If you look, we've got two bolts, one here and one down here, and these bolts are only about that long. They screw into this part, so you don't even have to take the boot out with all the grease and everything in there. It's really super simple, and these don't have a major amount of torque on them either. So all you got to do is basically just bump them and they come right loose, and then unscrew with your fingers. And as you can see, that's not a super big bolt. Both bolts are the same size, same length, so you really can't screw it up. Anyways, you get the bottom one loose, kind of hold on to your caliper there. Get the bottom one out, and then these you can slide in just a hair, and this will come right off, and you can just kind of lay it right there on top of the axle so it's not hanging by the hose, like so. And then you've got your two brake pads. These slide towards the outside on the outside, and it slides towards the inside on the inside. And make a note when you pull it off of where your noise maker is, because you're going to have to put it on the new one before you put it back on. Once you get those off, then you got these spring clips right here you need to pop off, because we've got new ones. So take those off, lay them off to the side. So now basically we are ready to go back with our new stuff. So first thing you got to do, put your spring clips in. So these things have the sides folded down there. You really can't mess it up. It's got to go in, and the only thing you got to do is make sure that it is centered on there so that it goes down just like that. And once it's down on there, it's going to grip on there. You don't have to hold it on there or fight with it. We'll get the second one in here. Just like that. So then you've got your little piece that goes on the inside brake pad. So you just compare it to your old one and you'll see where it goes, and it just clips on there. It's just a spring clip, just like that. And then you can take your inside pad and start it in the spring holders there, and that can be, you got to get them in there in the right spot and held. So that one's in. And always remember, your pad material goes to the rotor. Don't put the pads in backwards. So you can see on this pad right here, this is a new one, you see the pieces that stick out the side, and they go in this slot right here. And this thing, this spring clip, kind of holds it all tight, keeps it from rattling. So you can get it down in there, and it's kind of a pain to get in there, but once you get in the right spot, you'll know it, because it'll just slide right in just like that. Piece of cake. And now we'll just take our caliper and roll it back down where it was and push them two in. Oh wait, we have not compressed it. Okay. Not going to get that to go back on without compressing the caliper. So what we'll do is take, I always use one of the old pads against it, like so, and then take my now this is what you got to be careful of on here, is you're not going to be able to get this clamp exactly centered just because of the way this caliper is made. So you want to just be sure that when you start pulling on that, pushing that piston back in, that it's going nice and even, and that you're not cocking it to one side or the other. So you just use your C-clamp. Now, just so you know, I've got the cap on the reservoir loose up front, because this will push fluid back into the reservoir. But then once you get it bolted in and you start tightening down on the bolts, and then you hit that brake pedal, it's going to pull everything back where it should be. Alright, there we go. So you just got to kind of play around with it. Some calipers make it a lot easier because they give you a nice flat spot to put your clamp on, or you can get one of those tools that goes in between here and screws it out. But either way, now our piston is compressed, so now we can put our caliper back in place. So it just goes over your new brake pads and behind those two bolts. So you take your little bolts and start them by hand, and like most things, you want to get both of them started before you go tightening down on one or the other. And you might have to wiggle it around, there we go, to get it lined up with the threads that it's supposed to be in. And I go ahead and run them up hand finger tight. tighten them down. So you noticed when we pulled these out, there's not a, it's not, you don't need to torque the world out of these little bolts. Just a couple of bumps is good. And there we have it. Those brake pads are changed out. Now obviously if you were going to change the rotor, you'd be more involved, but I try to catch mine before it messes the rotor up. That way I don't have to do all that. And you can just change out the pads and be done with it. So now that that's back on there, the only other thing we want to do is we want to go around here and we're going to press the brake pedal down slowly a time or two, because that will push that piston out and all those brakes will basically self-adjust. Alright, so we're good there. Once that's done, tighten the cap back down on your reservoir. And the level in the reservoir is about, I don't know, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch higher than it was before I changed all these brake pads. So if you change out your brake pads and you know where your level starts, you can keep an eye on it and kind of tell your brake pad wear, because as the pads wear, the pistons go farther out in the calipers and more fluid goes out to them. There's less fluid in the reservoir. It won't be low, but that's also why you don't add fluid to a brake reservoir unless the level is below the add line, because when you go to change and put new brake pads on and you push that brake fluid back up into the reservoir, you'll overflow it and brake fluid will rust anything. It's terrible. So now all that's left to do is put our wheel back on, which I'm not going to film because, I mean, if you don't know how to put a wheel back on, I'm not really sure these videos would help you that much. But very simple to put brake pads on the rear of a 20 Chevy Colorado. Whole lot easier than the old disc brakes or the parking brake in there. So inside this rotor in here, there's a set of parking brake that are drum brakes. If you're smart and you don't try to drive with your parking brake on, they'll almost certainly last way longer than your brake pads. So generally, unless you're having issues with that, you don't mess with them. So I'll get my wheel bolted back on and continue my day. Hopefully this has been informative to somebody or helped somebody out, and appreciate y'all watching and supporting the channel. Y'all have a good one.